I am who I am today without even realizing it until I actually became involved with you all because of Ronald Reagan. President Reagan, I was in high school when he was president, and I'm going to frame my background for you in a minute because you're going to become quickly aware I'm freakishly obsessed with human behavior and trying to figure out why people are doing what they do. He inspired me to be a patriot and to be about my country and about everyone else but myself. All the things that you've heard all day long today. This was the coolest thing I've ever got to do in my entire life, and I think I've gotten to do some pretty cool things. So let me frame my background for you really briefly, because it's really important to understand where the code of trust comes from, what I'm going to share with y'all. And the most important thing I'm going to do today, too, is I'm working with slides today, even though I'm only on for about 45, 50 minutes, and I'll take some questions at the end. It's really important to me that you heard a lot of amazing people tell amazing stories about inspirational trust, inspirational leadership, collaboration, all these great things today. And it can be as it was for me, it can be a very subjective art form to understand at a very young age. What I always wanted was, because I'm not a natural born leader at all. I had a natural born desire to lead, but I didn't know the skills. Like when I was first in the Marine Corps, as part of my background, I'm a second lieutenant, and I got ranked last out of all the second lieutenants I was getting evaluated with. And I remember going to my major and asking him, I said, what was it? What am I doing wrong? And he goes, well, you just need to be a better leader. So be a better leader. What's this be a better leader? I need a do list. And so for my entire lifetime, I've put together this do list. And so let me go through the background. I'm a United States Naval Academy graduate. After Naval Academy, I went to the Marine Corps as a Marine Corps officer. My last duty station in the Marine Corps was Parris Island, South Carolina, where I was a company commander. And from there, I came in the FBI. I'm currently still FBI. I've been in the FBI for over 20 years. I've worked counterintelligence the entire time. And working counterintelligence, most of the time I've worked with Russians. And so my entire job for over 20 years is recruiting Russian spies. And if I can't recruit the Russian spy, I'm going to recruit everyone around you. And so basically my entire job is protect national security for over 20 years. And I have over 30 years working with the government. Now when you hear that kind of, a little bit more about that. Once I came in the FBI, I worked in New York City for my first 10 years, right during 9/11, recruiting Russians around the United Nations. From there, I went to Norfolk, Virginia. From Virginia, I went to headquarters, so I was up in the J. Edgar Hoover building and FBI headquarters, running the national program. And then I had been on our behavioral program as a behaviorist with counterintelligence since around 2001. Then I took over our team for counterintelligence behavioral analysis. In 2010, I ran our team for a number of years. And so what my team does is we go out and we work with case agents across the country, strategizing double agent operations, false flags, recruitment strategies, all this hooky, spooky spy stuff. Still very real, still goes on all the time. My job was to strategize these interactions and engagements. And when you hear that kind of background, it might kind of scream at you, hard charger, type A, see the ring, reach for the stars. Absolutely. But when you're 20 years old with no natural born leadership skills, you know what that is? Narcissistic, megalomaniac jerk. I thought the form of leadership I was learning was how to yell at someone and poke them in the eye, kick them in the butt, and get them to do what you want to do. Because ultimately, we learn a lot of these things when we're young, especially if you're in a sports team or in a club or something, and ultimately get an adult says, hey, I need you to get your people from move to here in 5 minutes, go. And eventually, what do? You walk up, hey guys, we need to go from here to here. And does anyone listen to you? No. And so then you get the adult mentor leader that comes and says, you just need to be a better leader. Be a stronger leader. And so what do? Yeah, you yell at them, and then they move. And then they say, hey, you're a great leader, great job. So you now just had validated bad leadership. You got validated how to be a bully. And so you keep getting these things validated, and now it becomes your behavior pattern for a very long time that you're going to have a long time undoing. This guy. So when you work in the world that I've worked in counterintelligence, you know, I'm the funny agent that'll tell you, I've never made an arrest in over 20 years. I don't even own handcuffs. I've been an operator for over 20 years. And so the people that I've interacted with that try to protect national security, do you think any of these people are criminals? Actually not. Very small percentage. Intelligence officers collecting information on behalf of their countries that are in our country to take this information. 99.9% of the time, do you think they're doing anything illegal? No. Open source collection. So nothing illegal. So in other words, they're not doing anything illegal. Oh, it's illegal for me as FBI to talk to them because they're diplomats. So I can't even talk to them, yet I'm supposed to get them to help us. Oh, and then everyone around them in their lives that they're getting information from. Clear defense contractors, think tankers, university researchers, grad students, PhDs. Are they doing anything illegal? No. So Why should any of these people want to have a conversation with me? Do you think if I try to use a hammer, convince them of anything, they're going to listen to me? No. This is the ultimate form of inspirational leadership. How can I want you to have a conversation with me? Luckily for me, I was surrounded by great Jedi Masters that understood this. I use a lot of Star Wars references, I apologize. These great Jedi mind arts, these great Jedi Masters that did the most inspiring job. Matter of fact, in my line of work, to actually have someone sign up to help our country as a patriot, as I learned from President Reagan, patriotic duties, to actually have someone to do that on behalf of us, it's as rare as hitting the lottery. And we get paid for buying a lotto ticket, I call it. Putting together an operation, an attempt to have a great conversation with a human being, offer them an opportunity to do something for our country. It's up to them whether they make that choice or not. But my Jedi Master that I learned from, he hit lottery 14 times in his career. He's the most amazing human being I've ever met. And going according to what you all were talking about this morning with humility, let me tell about my friend John. And I wrote him about in my book. In my book, he's called Jesse Thorne. But John, on his desk at work, where everyone likes to put I love me stuff, pictures of great things they've accomplished, he had nothing. He had pens and pencils and a cup holder. I didn't even know what he had accomplished in his life and his career until I went to his house, and our kids were roughly the same age, and my kids are downstairs playing floor hockey on his basement floor, cement floor. And I go down there and I see my son Kevin. I said, Kevin, what are you guys doing? He goes, oh, we're playing floor hockey. I said, what are you using for a puck? And he holds up this glass puck. And he goes, yeah, this one slides a lot better than a metal one we found in a shoebox over there. And I pick up this glass puck, and on the glass puck it says FBI Director's Award. The highest award you can get in my organization. Get almost a $40,000 bonus for winning this thing. And I said, Kevin, where'd you get this thing? And he goes, oh, it's in that shoebox. I go over to the shoebox. I open it up. I pulled out another one. The metal one? CIA's Director's Award. Did I know about this? No. Why? Humility. John was the most humble human being I've ever met in my entire life. He knew how to make it all about everyone else but himself, because that's what it's about. And so I got better at these things, because I'm learning by watching and observing that subjective art form, and you get better or you get a new job. And luckily what started happening was I got placed in positions where I had to teach these techniques. I had to do these things, when I was running the team. It was the first time someone made me sit down and make it a paint by number. And what I had to start doing was I had to start putting labels and meanings behind behaviors that I started seeing people doing and try to understand what it was. And I don't know if you all have seen it yet, but did you ever have an instance where your family or someone bought a new car, and as soon as you bought that new car, poof, you start seeing that car everywhere? Ever have that? Yeah, or even clothes, maybe sneakers or tennis shoes or something. And why? Because it now has labels and meanings to you, so you don't even have to try to see it, you just recognize it. Well, that's going to be doing for you today. I'm going to give you labels and meanings to all these things you've learned about all day long. Because human beings were exceptionally easy to predict. Because every single human being in the world, I don't care about your gender, ethnicity, race, anything, we're all seeking one core elements of things for when we interact with other human beings. We're seeking affiliation, because we're ancient tribal human beings. Our genetics and our biology say we want to feel affiliated. We want to belong to meaningful groups and organizations. Just look at today. When you started this morning, you're not part of a tribe yet. That's why there's silence. Everyone's a little tentative. Will they accept me for who I am? Can I share my thoughts and ideas? And meanwhile, this afternoon, a little rowdier, are we not? Because now we have commonality, we have tribe, we have background, we have affiliation. So if you can always talk in terms of demonstrating affiliation to someone else, that's going to be good for trust and good for leadership. And the second most important thing is demonstrating value. Because if you can demonstrate through your thoughts, words, and actions how you value another human being, they will trust you and they will follow you. Because think about this. Think about the greatest relationships in your life. How often during the course of your day, out of these great, strong friendships, your parents, your teachers, your mentors, and guides, do you do one of these four things in everything you say? Do you seek their thoughts and opinions? Because if you're seeking their thoughts and opinions, it means you value what they have to say. Are you talking in terms of their priorities? What's important to them? Their needs, wants, dreams, aspirations, goals, personal, professional, long-term, and short-term. Because if you're not talking in terms of their priorities of what's important to them, and they're listening to, they're merely being polite. They don't really care. Third, validate them. Validation means that you're seeking to understand non-judgmentally, and this key is non-judgmentally. Because if you start having your own ego creep in there and you think you're more superior than someone, and boy, you guys did a great job talking about that this morning, about this air of superiority. Anyone out here like to feel inferior to anyone? Then never demonstrate you think you're better than anyone. No one, one colonel I definitely learned working in the FBI in New York City, no one cares about your title and position. All they care about is how you treat them. And so you validate them non-judgmentally. It doesn't necessarily mean you agree with them, but it means you seek to understand non-judgmentally. And finally, empower people with choice. You do not give people choices unless you value who they are and value the choices they're going to make. Now think about this. If you actually know what you're trying to achieve and you know what your goals are, because you gave yourself your own new car effect, and you actually took time to understand the priorities of someone else, how they define prosperity, how they're going to define success in their lives, and now you empower them with choice, are you not going to naturally overlap the two together? Absolutely. And that's what collaboration becomes. And this is how you demonstrate affiliation, all the beautiful things this morning they were talking about. So that's my background. That's where this came from. And we're going to have some fun interacting with it. I'm going to put it up on the slides. I encourage you if you want. I literally put them up on the slides, so if you want to take out a cell phone and take a screenshot, go right ahead. I do cover a lot of this in the book, but it's covered in a slightly different way because I don't want to overlap on anything. So, and I'll take some questions at the end. Fair? All right. So this video, this is what kind of started it for me. And believe me or not, I was showing this video for the last couple of years before I was even asked to come here. That's why it was like a perfect overlap. Okay, make that thing work. Oh, how do I make the video play?
If we look to the answer as to why for so many years we achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth, it was because here in this land we unleashed the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look. The sloping hills of Arlington National Cemetery, with its row upon row of simple white markers bearing crosses or stars of David, they add up to only a tiny fraction of the price that has been paid for our freedom. Each one of those markers is a monument to the kind of hero I spoke of earlier. Their lives ended in places called Belleau Wood, the Argonne, Omaha Beach, Salerno, and halfway around the world on Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Pork Chop Hill, the Chosin Reservoir, and in 100 rice paddies and jungles of a place called Vietnam. Under one such marker lies a young man, Martin Treptow, who left his job in a small-town barber shop in 1917 to go to France with the famed Rainbow Division. There on the Western Front, he was killed trying to carry a message between battalions under heavy artillery fire. We're told that on his body was found a diary. On the flyleaf, under the heading, "My Pledge," he had written these words: "America must win this war. Therefore I will work, I will save, I will sacrifice, I will endure. I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost as if the issue of the whole struggle depended on me alone." We must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Let that be understood by those who practice terrorism and prey upon their neighbors. As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it now or ever. We are Americans.
Good, and it didn't fall. We're in the right place for that. So how did it make you feel? Motivated? What else? Inspired? Patriotic? Great. Are those subjective feelings? Yes. And they're great feelings. What I've become as a behaviorist is freakishly obsessed with, if I want to make someone feel that way, what's he actually doing? It just isn't a thing, and he's got that thing. This is why, President Reagan was the master communicator. But we'll take a few minutes. Let's pick apart a little bit of what was he doing to actually make you feel that way. Because if you're not naturally born with these things, do you think you can add them to your behaviors? Absolutely. What kind of things made you feel that way, you think, about what he said? Think about the words. What kind of words was he using? Sacrifice? Sure. What? We. How many times did you hear that this morning? Was the we. We free people. We free Americans. That kind of collective pronoun is so empowering. And now, who did he hold up on a pedestal? Remember, the 4 things he used to demonstrate value? Did you feel like he valued Americans? Yes. And what was he doing? He was validating. Who did he validate? A soldier, Private Treptow. Is Private Treptow high economic status or low? Low. And what did it take to be someone validated and valued by the President of the United States? Sacrifice. Is that something everyone can aspire to? Yes. Now, here's really the power of this. Did you believe what he was saying? Yes. And why? What did you hear? And what did you see? Passion, which is a subjective word. You can identify why you saw passion. When he mentioned Private Treptow, did you hear his voice crack? So what you have is what I call congruence between that which is being said and the emotion that's being felt. When my team goes in to do a consultation for a case agent, I have outlawed words on my team. I will not allow any human being that I'm interacting with on my team or anywhere else to objectify another human being, to look down on them in any way. People think in terms of, oh, the FBI's got subjects or targets. No, we don't. We have human beings we're going to have an interaction with. Because what you have here is you have congruence of words and emotion about the human beings that are interacting with. Did you ever deal with a bad salesman or anything, or any individual kind of gave you the creeps? And you don't even know why, do you? They might be saying the right thing, but something's off. And you know what's off? Incongruence. They're saying something that's incongruent with what they're feeling. And this is a bedrock of leadership. Leaders, who are leaders about, yourselves or others? Others. Now, if you're actually in it for yourself, people are going to pick up on it. I guarantee it. I absolutely guarantee it. And so this is the process about how do you make it about everyone else, and that's what the Code of Trust is about. There's so many more things we could talk about with this video. I'd do it all day long. But really, anytime you see something or encounter someone that gives you those passionate feelings about who you are as a human being, I want you to try to figure out why. Because are those not behaviors you wish you had yourself? And maybe you already do. For all the great teachers, mentors, and guys that have been up here this morning, the most important thing you can do is once you figure out how to do this, and remember, this is not a destination, this is a journey. Once you start figuring this out, the most important thing you can do is start passing it along. My Jedi Master, John, had no idea what he was doing. He was just doing it. It would have been so much more helpful if he said, watch what I'm going to do, and this is exactly why I'm doing it like this, because here's how we're going to make it about someone else. Because me, I had a passion and desire to want to be that way, but I wasn't born that way. It took me 49 years to figure this out, and I'm still figuring it out. Seeing y'all, dealing this now, and listening to everyone I heard this morning and throughout the day and last night, this is the most awe-inspiring thing I've ever been part of my entire life, because you all are getting it, 30 years, 20 years before I figured it out. That is amazing to think about the things you're going to be able to do in your life with understanding what inspirational leadership is all about. So basically, I'd like to make sure that their brain is rewarding them chemically for engaging with me. I talked about that ancient tribal man. So what's going on here is, since we're genetically coded to want to be valued and affiliated with other human beings, our ancient tribal brain back here, the ancient mammalia brain, when we're having these things demonstrated to us, we're actually having the pleasure centers in the brain are starting to fire. Dopamine's starting to flow, oxytocin, serotonin in the bloodstream. All the pleasure centers in the brain are firing when we're actually feeling affiliated, when we're feeling like we're not being judged, and we're feeling like we're being valued. And so societal norms say this is a good way to be a human being, and also our genetics and biology are also saying this is a great way to be a human being. because you're demonstrating that affiliation. That's the power of this. And did you know they did a study at Harvard University in the spring of 2012 that actually took this anecdote and made it very science-based, that roughly 40% of every day, all of us are talking about our own thoughts, opinions, and priorities, and we're sharing them with other people. I mean, think about this. What did you do all day long? Did you share thoughts, opinions, and ideas with other people? What happened when someone shook their head, they smiled at you, and they validated you? How did it make you feel? You want to tell you even more, because that's demonstrating value and affiliation, and your dopamine is flowing. What leaders do, leaders take that 40% that they want to talk about themselves, and they consciously give it over to someone else. And now they can double up. Because again, think about that. The greatest relationships in your life, you're roughly probably doing 5% of that time, you're actually demonstrating value and affiliation. You jack that up to 100%, I guarantee you their brain is going to reward them for engaging with you. I guarantee you they're going to want to be around you. I guarantee you they're going to want to follow you, because that's what leaders do. Leaders don't tell people what to do. Leaders inspire people to want to follow along on the common path and common goals. And how do they want to do that? By demonstrating value. So when you put these things together, this was what I came up with. You know, a lot of times, especially you think someone working in the FBI, I've been trained in the art of manipulation, elicitation of information, convincing people how to do things, verbal judo, and I don't do any of those things. I don't lie, I don't manipulate, and I have complete open, honest communications and relationships with the people I engage with, and I work in counterintelligence. Because as soon as you start lying, deceiving, is there going to be incongruence? Absolutely. And if you get lied to, do you ever trust that person again? No. And so if you want to start out a relationship on a great foot, go ahead, try to lie. See what happens. So I'd never think in terms of convincing anyone of anything. Can you? Not really. If you have a different belief system than I do, and I have something to say about yours, I hear what you have to say, and I say, that's not what I think, here's what I think. Are your shields up or shields down? Guaranteed. As opposed to, help me understand. I never heard it put that way before. How'd you come up with that? Seeking thoughts and opinions, shields coming down. After I hear your thoughts and opinions, meanwhile, what am I trying to do to begin with? Get you to listen to me, correct? So can I convince her to listen to me? No, I think in terms of how can I inspire her to want to listen to me? And so after I validate and seek to understand, I said, oh, wow, now I'm curious, what do you think about this? And now I'm asking your thoughts and opinions about what I wanted you to listen to begin with. It's a completely different way to engage human beings. If you're a leader in a position, you're trying to get people to do X and Y and Z. I never think in terms of how can I convince them to do this if they don't want to. I think in terms of how can I inspire them to want to do it. Because if I'm convincing someone of something, is that about me or them? It's about me. And what's leadership about? Them. When you think of inspiring someone, is that about me or them? It's about them. Because when you think in terms of inspiring someone to take action, inspiring someone to be a leader, inspiring someone to follow you, inspiring someone to listen to you, inspiring someone to move down a path for their own success, you have to talk in terms of them, which forces you to reverse that optic. In other words, leaders set goals, they have missions, they have objectives they're trying to enact. And this is where people get muddy on this. Well, if leadership's about everyone else, but all I'm trying to do is accomplish my goals, how's that leadership? This is it. Leaders set that goal, they give themselves that new car effect. Like I said before, do you have to try to see the new car? You just see it. You just see it. You see opportunities. So you label it, give it title meaning, you put it back here, now you make it about them. So that's where the reverse comes in. Now you think in terms of inspiration. So here's the code of trust we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how to demonstrate value and affiliation. The 4 things I gave you, I'm going to put them on the screen so you can see it again. I'm going to give you the format I use when I communicate with someone. Because this format, it's purely majestic because it's all about them. The philosophy of trust, how to make it all about them, and we've already talked about some of the chemistry of trust, what's going on in the brain. So step 1 in this leadership process of the code of trust for me is, what's my goal? What am I trying to accomplish? What's my short-term, long-term goal? All these things come into play, and now, as you can see, the second part is it, so why should they? And I used to think, when I first started understanding the code of trust and I put this together, I used to think it was just, all right, just one goal, move towards that. But then it got much, much deeper, and this is where it got deeper to. And I'm going to highlight this down here. Did you ever hear the term, it's the means to the ends? And everyone thinks in order to get to the ends, you have to achieve the means first, correct? Well, I'm going to blow your mind. We're going to flip it. Means goals are generally very specific in nature. I want to get into school. I want to get this major. I want to do it well in this final. I want to get this job. Those are means goals, correct? But ultimately, why are you doing those things? What are you trying to do? Why are you doing what you want to do? I want to serve others. That's an end goal. If you don't go through OCS next summer, that's a means goal, correct? Will you still be able to serve others? So there's another path. In other words, don't get focused on, and you know this, I know this, we talk a lot. Don't get focused on the means goals, because if you're trying so hard and it gets so like this, what happens up here? Brain noise, emotional hijacking, stress, anxiety, discontentment, resentment, anger, frustration. Do you make good decisions when you're doing that? No, and when you're doing that, you don't have the ability to be objective. Take that step back and see, oh wow, there's another path over here I was meant to do even more. And I'm witnessing you all walk in that path, and it's a compulsion. You feel compelled to do these things, and you only can feel the compulsion when you can keep the brain calm, clear, and you take the step back and understand and ask yourself, why am I doing these things? And so my means goals, that's why they're blank. I'm very flexible on them. But here's the funny thing about this. I focus on, these are my 3 core ends goals right here. Happy, healthy professional relationships. Anytime I get emotional hijacking going, the first thing I ask myself is what I'm about to say and do going to help or hinder a healthy relationship? A relationship without drama, without deception, subterfuge, or anything else. My next ends goal is open, honest communication and transparency. You cannot have a healthy relationship unless you have transparency and open, honest communications. My bosses at work know exactly what I do and how I do it. And a lot of people say, Robin, you're allowed to do things like this? And I go, my bosses say so because they know exactly what I'm doing. Because if they want me to change, I'll change. Because what's my goal? Make them happy. Third, my last anchor is an available resource for the prosperity of others with no expectation or reciprocity. And this is that leadership factor. This is what leaders do. Leaders make themselves available resources for others' prosperity. In order to do that, I have to understand what you define as prosperity. And the big thing here is I don't do it out of expectation that you're going to do something for me in return. Because now, why am I doing it? For me, I'm manipulating you. That's it. Those are my 3 core goals, ends goals. Everything I do supports that. Now, right under those, for an ends goal, protect national security in my community. Are there lots of ways to do that? Absolutely. If I'm supposed to recruit a Russian spy to help that, great. If you don't want to, okay. But if I leave you feeling better for having met me with good brain rewards, what's that? Positive branding, your relationships. And here's the magical thing about this. The more I've focused on good, healthy relationships in my life with everyone I touch, what do you think starts happening with the relationships in their lives? Better and stronger. It's this massive calming effect that makes this leadership thing really, really flawless. And someone once asked me, so Robin, if you're taking all your time to validate others and talk in terms of their priorities, and you're giving up your 40% where you get your dopamine hit and you're giving over to someone else, when you get your dopamine hit, when does it feel great? Well, that's easy. What happens to each of you when you actually achieve a goal? What happens in here? How do you feel? Good. And what if your goal is to be available resource to the prosperity of others, and now you've achieved it? How are you feeling? And therein lies the cycle of leadership. If I invested in your success and I made myself a resource for your success and you're successful, does that inspire me to want to continue to do it? And at any point in here, did we say it's about me and me getting promoted or me looking great? No, that's what you all were talking about this morning so majestically. So next, step 2, ascertain the individual's priorities. Now we know what we want to do. Now we've reversed it with our means, goals, and ends goals. Step 2 is understand the individual's priorities, those needs, wants, dreams, and aspirations. Personal, professional, long-term, short-term. What's important to them? Someone once asked me, so Robin, if I could walk away with 2 things I can do today to start helping me, literally just 2 things, instead of being all rah-rah, this is walk away feeling really good, what can I actually do? I said, this is easy. Figure out the people's strengths in your lives, what they're really good at. Because I guarantee you this, no one in here is without a flaw. Just being this guy. Stop focusing on what's wrong with people. Start focusing on what's right with them. And maybe it's at school, maybe it's at home, maybe it's there's greatness in everyone. Take time to figure out their greatness, because the way you're going to start every conversation, if it's going to be a little one that might be a little challenging, you start by validating their greatness with specificity. You can only do that if you understand what their priorities are. And the second thing you're going to do is this. Figure out what their priorities are. Because you always got to talk in terms of them, because I guarantee you this. Well, if any of you all, we all have overlapping priorities today, do we not? We're all here for leadership. So it's easy to have conversation with everyone today because we have overlapping priorities accidentally or by design. This is why you can use the same conversation that I'll have same, just being who you are. I got a great relationship, oh my God, a total fail. Well, I'm just talking about what's important to me, and it's accidental, and it's a fail. Because you weren't really focusing on what's important to them. You're focusing on what's important to you, and you just have accidental overlaps. You want to be conscientious about leadership, figure out what's important to her now, and talk in terms of those things. Suspend your own need to talk about yourself. Step 3, ascertain the individual's context, how they see the world through their personal optic, their ethnicity, gender, generation, age, well, it's part of the generation, being redundant, but all these things play into how the person sees the world through their particular optic and lens. I've worked Russia for most of my careers, and I've actually worked probably 22 different countries across the world. And I once had someone ask me, so Robin, you worked Russia most of the time, you a Russian expert? All I said in return was, I don't know, you an American expert? Hell, can you be a Californian expert? Is there homogeny amongst the state of California and Virginia? Is there in Virginia? And, oh, where are my people on the East Coast? Do I have any Virginians? I'm a Virginia guy. In Virginia, where do you live in Virginia? Falls Church. So you're Northern Virginia. Are you local or are you transplant? Okay, transplant. Northern Virginia, very different than the rest of the state, is it not? Did you ever go out west, I-81 corridor, starting up to Winchester, going all the way down to Bristol, about an 8-hour drive? Three dialects. Three different dialects in the same commonwealth. Where Virginians call ourselves a commonwealth. Other people call us a state. Down in the Tidewater area around Norfolk, you got a different dialect. It's completely different. And that's just in one state. Some people call these things sneakers, if you're from New York. Other people call them go-fasters if you're in the Marine Corps. Running shoes in other places. Pop, soda, Coke. All these things have different words and meanings. Why? Different demographic. And when you're talking in terms of other people, you want to communicate how they want to be communicated with, and you do it by understanding context, again, without judging it. So now when you start putting all these things together, we've got to make sure we're going to start applying the 5 principles of trust. Suspend your ego. I've said this before, and some people say, how can that be true? I say the code of trust that I'm sharing with you is completely flawless. The only time it will fail is when your ego and vanity gets in the way, and it's okay, it will. Matter of fact, the first time you might put the code of trust into action, it's going to be majestic. You're going to be like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. I talked in terms of what was important to them. I gave them resources for doing it. I knew what I wanted to do, and they actually came back and gave me a great hand. It was amazing. And what the thing that might start happening to you that you're going to fall into a trap of, now I'm going to do it again. And you think you're going to start wielding the power of the code of trust. Well, now who's it now become about? You, and it'll completely blow up again. So suspend your ego. This is about inspirational leadership about others. Second, be non-judgmental, which is part of that ego suspension. Do not judge. Over 20 years of talking to every kind of individual on the face of the planet, trying to protect my national security. What do you think happens if I stand here and judge you in any way? Half the world's going to line up against you. I guarantee it. And if my entire job is to try to have you collaborate with me so we can protect national security and save lives, and I start off by judging you, what's the likelihood you want to collaborate? Not very. Some people have a hard time with this judging thing. A lot of times I'm working with a case agent, they have a hard time not judging the person they're supposed to have interaction with. And I say, that's all right. There is no right or wrong in my book. They're just cause and effect. If you just can't help but to judge this person, you're not the person who's going to be interacting with them. But you say it's got to be you, then here's what I can guarantee. They're not going to want to talk to you. It's a guarantee. Do what you want. I can guarantee, so here's what I can guarantee about human behavior, which is, you want to really understand the Jedi arts? You want to predict human behavior? Here's how I can completely predict human behavior. We talked about this last night. Just these things we already talked about, understanding your priorities, understanding your context, understanding what's important to you. And what's the anchors of the code of trust? Healthy relationships, open honest communication, and available resource for your prosperity. If I take the time to figure out, and you share with me your priorities, your needs, wants, dreams, and aspirations, what you view as important in your life, and now I offer you resources for you to achieve those things, I guarantee you're going to do it. Why wouldn't you? Because it's in your best interest to do it. Human beings will always do things that are in their best interest, guaranteed. Now, if I know it's in your best interest and I offer you resources for you to achieve the things that are in your best interest, you're going to do it. Now, if you don't do it, you know why? They just lied to you, and I'm doing crazy. Honor reason. Reason is this whole thing we've been talking about. Reason means that we're being cognitive about our thought process. We were talking about mentors and guides last night. I thought it was a great conversation. And the question was, well, how do you tell someone what to do if I don't feel like I'm worthy of that? First of all, I don't tell anyone what to do ever because I honor reason. What reason for me is having a clarity of thought. If I take time to understand what your goals and objectives are and your priorities, all I do is ask you questions about, hey, how is what you're doing now helping or hindering you to get to where you're trying to go? If it's not, well then, what can I do to be a resource for you to get there? Or maybe you need to switch a goal up, or maybe you need to make different choices about how to get there. Now, did I tell you what to do? No, I caused you to think. I caused you to think about how to get to where you're trying to go. And a lot of times people have no idea where they're trying to go. So that now becomes a goal, trying to figure out what it is you're trying to do. And so that's it. I call them discovery questions, and that's what I call honoring reason. And validation of others. Again, we already talked about that. Seeking to understand them non-judgmentally for who they are. So that step 4 is just kind of putting this all together. So we're just putting our priorities together, context together, goals, objectives, theirs. And now this is step 5. I call this crafting our encounter, crafting the get-together, the encounter. This is the format I use without fail in every encounter I do that is going to be a little bit out of the norm. It's a stranger I'm meeting for the first time, or a group I'm trying to lead that might be resistant, or I'm a new person coming on board to do it, or whatever it might be. If life is a little bit out of the normal, this is making sure I'm going to communicate in this way. And you're going to see how it all starts playing together. The first thing I'm going to do, and this is what we talked about at lunch, was I'm always going to start out with a specific non-judgmental validation of a strength, attribute, or action. And what was one of the 2 things I said you need to start doing with every human being? Figure out their strengths. Because if you want to have a great conversation, start out with what they're great at and be specific. And what I mean by that is, because if people, can you figure out if someone's just trying to manipulate you and say, hey, that's a really nice jacket? Do what? As opposed to last week when I saw you do X, Y, and Z, or even today when I saw you in the interaction we were doing, when you came up with this idea and you laid this down like this, that was amazing. How did you come up with that? What kind of experiences led you to understand it at that level? And do you think you'd be able to share that with someone else? That's a specific non-judgmental validation of strength, attribute, or action. Are you now excited to hear what questions I have and what I want to talk about? Because who am I talking about? You. So that gets your shields down. Next, I'm going to seek your thoughts and opinions regarding your priorities, or what's important to you. Again, is that about you or me? It's about them. When I seek your thoughts and opinions, what am I doing? Demonstrating value. Next, I'm going to validate those things that you just said. Again, not necessarily agreeing with, although a lot of times it winds up being that way. But it doesn't have to be. Just validate it, says, oh, wow, I understand what you're saying. That was really insightful. Next, a lot of times I just want you to listen to what I wanted to say as well, so I'm going to ask your thoughts and opinions about what I wanted to say. And again, I'm getting you to listen to my thoughts. You want to be, did you ever hear the expression, you want to plant seeds with people? You don't plant seeds with people by telling them what you think. You plant seeds with people by asking them what they think. Here's another guarantee of human behavior. If I ask you what you think, you're going to keep thinking about it. Even if you don't want to, you're going to keep thinking about it. That's why asking thoughts and opinions is so powerful and so important. And finally, I know what my priorities are, I know what your priorities are. I'm going to empower you with choice, because what do we do with people we value? We give them choices. Do people like to be told what to do, or they like having choices? Choices, so give them choices. But since I know what I want, I know what you want, and when I give you choices, what am I naturally going to do? They're going to overlap. And that's what leaders do. That's why we move to objectives together. And then finally, if appropriate, I empower you with choice of remaining in contact or assistance with me. I do this specifically in the FBI, and this blows people's minds. Because people think, oh, we got to get this guy on board no matter what. And I tell them, hey, if you want to walk away and not deal with me, I completely understand. How many times do you think people walk away with me doing this? No one's ever walked away yet. 0. Why? Who did I make it all about, me or them? Them, 100% them. And every single thing in here, complete truth. I will not lie about any of these things. I have lots of examples I've used, with email exchanges with people, with both at home, work, and play that I could throw, but it takes a lot of time to do. Every single thing I do is complete honesty and truth. People at work say to me, Robin, so you doing it to me now? I said, what, working the code of trust on me? I said, absolutely. I'm not naturally born doing this. This takes time and effort because I want to serve myself. My ego says, I want to win. As soon as I start doing that, I guarantee you I'm going to lose. That's why I have the code of trust. So how do we make every statement about them? This is the 4 things I said earlier. This is what I build into everything I say and do. Seek their thoughts and opinions. Talk in terms of their priorities. validate their priorities and context, and empower them with choices. It is so easy to build any one of these things in anything you're saying or writing, if that's okay with you. What did I just build in? If that's okay with you, what's that? It's a choice. Take the statement you were going to make and ask yourself before you say it or before you write it, is this about me or is it about them? If it doesn't have one of these 4 elements, most likely it's about you. You're wasting your words. Anyone ever write an email, and before you send the email, you think about who it's going to, and then you kind of recraft and retinker it? That's what this is on steroids. So all I do is I do a lot of consulting with people. I do a lot of mediating with communicating, and all I ever do is, hey, write down what it is you want to say. I don't need to know anything about what you're talking about, because I'm a complete moron in most topics I work. But all I can do is I'm going to go line by line. I'm just going to make sure that every line you're saying is about them. And I just make sure I build one of these things in. It's really that simple. So here's an exercise for you I challenge you to do. This is the beginning. And again, I know I got a lot of awesome leaders out there already. So hopefully you're recognizing some of the things you're already doing, and think about the great relationships you have. I guarantee you, the great relationships you have, you're doing a lot of these things. This is why it's working. Think about the relationships that are more challenging for you. And I guarantee you, if you add some of these things to it, they will be less challenging. But this is what I do. Create yourself, when you go home tonight, your means goals and ends goals. If you can ask yourself, why am I doing this? And you can still give yourself an answer, it's still a means goal. Rank them, prioritize them. Because when you're doing that and you're writing things down, what are you giving yourself? The new car effect. You'll recognize opportunities more frequently. Then, identify the relationships in your life. Because as you awesome people were saying this morning, I say to my son and my daughter all the time, you can have all the skills in the world. You can be a rocket scientist with 5 PhDs, but if you don't have relationships, you're completely useless. You do not do anything in this world solo, except come in and go out. Well, not even that. So it's all about relationships. And so that's why identify your means goals and ends goals. Now identify the relationships in your life. And then ask yourself, do I value these relationships, and how do I demonstrate value? Because now I want you to make sure you've identified and know this. Think about the good relationships you have. Do you actually understand what the strengths of these people are? How often have you gone out of your way to identify their strengths? And can you name them? Can you list them? Do it. Next, identify the priorities of those people. Because if you're not talking in terms of their strengths and validating them and talking in terms of their priorities, why would they want to listen to you? They're being polite. Then, identify how they define prosperity. What are they trying to do? What's their job? Because now all you're going to do, how can you make it easier for them? And at any point after that first step, did it ever come back to you? No. You won't have to. It'll happen when it's ready to happen according to their tempo and time. This is such an easy, is this not easy? This is so common sense, is it not? This breaks down the subjective art form of leadership. This is a paint by number. I live this code of trust now. My life has gotten so completely simple, it's ridiculously simple. And I analyze everything, to the nth degree, obviously. And even recently, my third anchor of make myself an available resource for the prosperity of others with no expectation of reciprocity. Long words, and I was like, how is it my bosses rank me really high? How is it they leave me alone to do things the way I want to do them? Which is everyone's dream, really. Is like, let me do what I want to do the way I want to do it. And then I thought about how am I applying the code to that? What am I actually doing? I said, oh, this is what I'm doing. I know exactly what every single one of my bosses is trying to do. I know who's trying to get promoted. I know how they want to get promoted. I know what's important to them. And so you know what I'm doing every single day of my life and my career? Everything I can do to make their job easier. That's it. My son, he's an esteemed guy like you all out there. He got an early acceptance to the Naval Academy, and I sat down with him at the beginning of the year, and I thought to myself, how did we do this? Yeah, he's got mad skills, great SAT scores. I mean, he's great. He's just, like you all. In this crowd, he'd be a pretty average guy. But I sat down and I said, how did we do this? It's easy. I figured out everyone's job along the way, whether it was the medical board, whether it was the people interviewing, whether it was the nomination panel, I figured out what their job was, and I tried to make it really easy for them to say yes. We didn't make it about us, we made it about them. What's your job? What can I do to make it easier? Think about that. Teachers, grades, clubs, school, anything. What's the job of those above you? What's the job of those around you? And what are you going to do to make it easier for them to do it and achieve it while still maintaining our mission? Oh, look, I'm right on. That's like unusual. It's easy to get in touch with me. My website is peopleformula.com. I have other videos. If you didn't get enough Death by Robin today and through the book there, there's more keynotes on there and a lot of podcasts of me talking about the Code of Trust some more. That's it. I'll take some questions. Clap. Someone back there? And back there.
Hi. I'm just wondering, in what way is this different than the Socratic method?
You know, it's really funny. I've never read the Socratic method. I'm serious. So I did a lot of study for a lot of years of elicitation, manipulation. And I mean, I have periods of my life when I was actually teaching at Quantico, you know, how to elicit information. I mean, try to get PIN numbers, dates of birth from people like this. I use an intentional misstatement. You know, it's like, oh, you must be born, what, June? No, July. Oh, the 20th? No, the 26th. I mean, I just got a date of birth. I didn't even ask a question. So my methodology, now granted, it works. I've heard about it, but I've never read the book on it. I've never, you know, the only books I've read, Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. What's that book about? Everyone else. I live this. And so what I did was, and here's the validation of all the things you've heard today and all the other books that you'll read, these great books on this. Mine was completely made independent. And it's just complete overlap again, proving what everyone is saying is how do you make it about everyone else, which is the Socratic method. Make sense? Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, doctor. Taking notes is very validating, by the way. Good job.
Thank you. Okay, so how do you call someone out without, you know, coming across as judgmental while still trying to right a wrong or make a correction to their behavior that you don't like or it's offensive or
lots of words in there. First, call someone out. I never call anyone out. Correct their behavior that's wrong. No one's ever wrong. There's just cause and effect from behaviors. When you become freakishly obsessed with words and the meaning and the impact you're going to have, I have words and ways I think that I outlaw in my mind. So let me rephrase if I could for me. So someone does something that is incongruent with moving forward in a successful, prosperous way for you and the team. Okay, is that better? So if someone's exhibiting behavior and you want to correct the behavior, can you convince them? I think in terms of how can I inspire them to want to correct their behavior. First thing, in order to inspire someone to want to correct behavior, you have to understand what is it you're trying to achieve. You know, why are you in this job? Why are you trying to do what you want to do? Why are you in this title and position? What are you trying to accomplish? You know, and now we just have a conversation about, well, tell me this. Well, first of all, I start out with non-judgmental validation and strength attribute or action to get the shields down. And then I say, well, help me understand, is what you're doing helping or hindering where it is you're trying to go and what you're trying to achieve? If you don't like working for me or being with me, okay, how can I help you move on? Who wants you? What are they going to say about you? What's the first thing someone's going to do if they want to move on? They're going to ask me what I think. What do you want me to say? And why should I say it? Is that the behavior you're exhibiting? And what am I doing the entire time? I'm asking questions. And you all were talking about this morning too, is asking questions. That's all this is. I'm asking discovery questions. That's all leaders do is, you know, that's why to me there's no difficult conversations. There's conversations about you. And if what you're doing, if your role, title, and position, and the things that are according to what you should be doing, now granted, what do you have to do first? Everyone has to be very clear on what their responsibilities are. Because now if people are falling short of responsibilities, well, we just have a conversation about what it is that is incongruent with your behavior and your responsibilities. Do you not want to be part of this group anymore? Okay, so how can we help you move on? Because I'd rather have 5 people giving me 120%, as we said before, than 10 people I'm trying to convince to give me 5% reluctantly. Because if you're trying to do that, what do you now have? You have incongruent priorities. In other words, if their priorities no longer want to be with you and be part of this group or organization, what are you going to do as a leader? I'm going to help you move on because you obviously don't want to be here. So we have a conversation about, okay, so you don't want to be here. Okay. Again, non-judgmentally. And that's really rough, is to not take it personally. Because people take things personally. Why? We're insecure. Very, very rarely do people do things to you. You just happen to be in the way of their insecurities. That's why one of my little catchphrases, I do not allow myself to be collateral damage in anyone else's insecurities. That was a good one. Anyone else? There's one back there. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, good. A couple more. Yay.
So how long did you consciously have to think about implying the code of trust before it just became part of your personality?
Every day of my life.
How long?
So this is a process. It guarantees it's a process. But the first step in any process is what? Is give it a label and meaning. And so here's what, literally, I mean, you look at my background, Marine Corps officer, Naval Academy graduate, FBI guy. When I face a problem, my first natural human reaction in my genetics and biology is I want to take out a baseball bat and I'm going to fix this problem. But what's that? That's emotional hijacking. So what I've trained myself to do is I recognize when I get emotional hijacking, stress, all those emotions that get me on edge. As soon as I get that emotion, because I only do calm. I do not do crazy brain. And it's funny, I always say I don't do crazy. I don't do crazy as everyone thinks I'm saying you're crazy. No, I don't do crazy in here. Because as soon as I get crazy going, I take that step back, and that's when I ask, is what I'm about to do or say going to help or hinder healthy, happy relationships, open, honest communication, available resources? I go through that exercise. You build muscle memory. It takes muscle memory. It takes time. How many of y'all, you're right with your dominant hands, and did anyone ever have to switch hands for breaking a hand or something? Few. When you first had to, how difficult was it? And did you get better at it over time? It's fine with you, of course. But that's what happens. You can get better at things over time because you're building new skills in it. It just takes muscle memory. There's no difference with muscle memory with dexterity as there is muscle memory with behavior. And the greatest thing is this. You can't change who you are and what you're doing. That's another guarantee. Your genetics, your biology, your upbringing, your context, you cannot change it. But these things, you can add. This is all about adding, not changing who you are. It's about adding to who you are. That's a good question. Yeah. Say it loud. Say it proud. No, he's coming.
What's the best way to make relations with those who have preconceived notions about you?
Best way to make relations with people who have preconceived notions of you. I don't do unhealthy. If someone has preconceived notions, and now, granted, if they're preconceived notions, I got to ask myself, why do people have preconceived notions? A lot of reasons why people have preconceived notions. Maybe it's insecurities, maybe it's their upbringing, maybe it's their context. And so if it doesn't do harm, in other words, if it doesn't bother me and I have to work with someone, all right, I'll start asking discovery questions. In other words, if I want someone to have a different way of thinking and you want to have them think of you in a different way or think of someone else in a different way, so why should they want to? How can I inspire them to want to? In order to do that, I have to start breaking down walls. Now, if someone's behavior is unhealthy and it's causing unhealthy in here, I won't engage. This is not meant to be overlapping. Because I literally do not do unhealthy relationships. And we talked about this last night as well. Because there's very rare situations in life that you have to do something or you have to interact with someone. They are very rare, very, very rare. We had the military side. That's what we were talking about last night. Where you actually are assigned something, you have to do it. You're under contract, you have to do it. Because all these situations where you have to engage with someone and that might be judgmental of someone else, are those means goals or ends goals types of people? They're means goals. So if you're unhealthy, and the reason why we're interacting is because we're actually are working on a project or working on a club or we're trying to work on another ends goal, and this is unhealthy, well, our priorities are no longer congruent. I'll work with you. See what I mean? I let go. Now here's the key. This is what's really rough. Don't have any animosity towards that person. It's just where they're at in their life and they're on their own path. Don't judge it. Because then what's that start doing? I don't argue. That's the other thing I don't do. I don't argue context with anyone. If you have a certain point of view, I'm not going to argue it. Because I guarantee you this, it'll serve no purpose. Zero purpose. The first thing I think of in myself is, how can I inspire you to want to think something different? And now if someone is so resistant, their shields are so high, they don't want to seek something different, then goodbye. I walk over here. Because here's another golden truth. If I can't, and I get this a lot of times at work, how do you deal with a toxic boss at work? How do you deal with a toxic person running an organization? A lot of times, there will be times when you can't do anything about that toxic person. What can you do about the people around them? You can mitigate their effect. That toxic person, you can mitigate the effect on the people around them. So what do toxic people feed off of? The reaction that they're causing on the people around them. You mitigate their reaction so they no longer react, it goes away, they move on. One of the things that President Reagan did famously, which was really good at de-escalating toxic people, self-deprecating humor, jokes about himself. Who tells a self-deprecating joke about themselves? Someone secure or insecure? Secure. And that's about owning up to your weaknesses. It doesn't even matter what you think your weakness is sometimes. If someone else thinks you're weak in a certain area, poke a joke at it. For those who remember, during the presidential election, what did they say about President Reagan? Too old. And so what did he do? Right, I'm too old. Next. Matter of fact, his first presidential address, State of the Union address. And for the people in the press that place a high premium on accuracy, let me tell you, I was not actually there to hear George Washington's first speech. Broke the place up. What did he just do? Didn't argue context. He never said, I'm not too old. He just said, you're right, okay, I'm too old. Next. Funny, isn't it? I just don't argue context. That's one way. There's a lot of ways to deal with it. What else? Am I okay on time? One more? Okay, one more.
So if you were to go back in time and apply the Code of Trust, I guess in a subordinate role, so more specifically like in the Marine Corps, whether you were enlisted or officer, what role do you think you would do using Code of Trust?
What would I do differently in the Marine Corps if I knew the Code of Trust back then like now? I would stop trying to make myself look so good. Because, and I did the same thing when I came in the FBI. I thought the way of having a successful career in the Marine Corps, in the FBI, and everything else was make myself look good. If I make myself look good, I have great cases. I'm the best guy at X, Y, and Z. I'm the best on the PFT. I'm the best at this. I look good. People that look good, they're going to be leaders. Nope. I would have done what you all said this morning. I would have figured out how to make other people around me look good. Because when they look good, who wants you around? Everyone. That's all I would have done different. I would have completely reversed it. I would have stopped being so egocentric, self-centered, trying to think of the. And now, granted, does anyone consciously think that? No, I didn't. I didn't go to work saying, all right, today I'm going to be the man. No, it just comes out because I wasn't aware enough to realize how to make it about everyone else. Great question. That's it. Thanks again, guys. Thanks for all you do.
Oh, Robin, I'm going to ask you to jump back up here real quick.
So what?
Jump back up here real
Okay.
quick. Thank you so much. Just want to thank Robin for his time today and wanted to let all of you know that his book, The Code of Trust, is available for each of you to grab on your way out today. Robin spent some painstaking time yesterday autographing all of them for you. So you'll have a signed copy of Robin's book upon when you leave. And they're going to be over there in the corner or over there through the double door. So before you leave today, make sure you pick up his book. Additionally, you will have the opportunity in a few short moments after our closing remarks to actually meet Robin and get a photo taken with him. So if you are interested after our closing remarks to meet Robin, we're just going to start the line right over there and have everyone come through. And Robin has said he will stay until the last person who wants to meet him, okay? Last but not least, many of you during lunch, I was so proud to see that you took our networking challenge to heart, and we have 5 winners. And so I was going to let Robin announce the 5 winners of our networking scavenger hunt challenge, and when he calls your name, please come on up, and we have a wonderful prize for you.
Yay, prizes. All right, so the first is Jessica Knight. Hey. Yep. Next, Catherine Zhu. Hey, congratulations. Next is Jake Clark. Congratulations. Good question. Next is Molly Waldman. Good job, Molly. And next is a favorite name of mine because it's my daughter's name as well, Caitlin Alsop. Hi, Caitlin. That's it. Thank you.
And last but not least, we're going to be closing out to the day listening to someone who is the heart of our organization. So please give a round of applause for our Chief Admin Officer, Joanne Drake.
Good afternoon. I want to thank you all for bearing with us all day long. It has been an extraordinary day for me to watch all of you, to watch the presenters. I am so very, very proud of all of you. I did tear up myself a little bit. I know I share that emotion with some of my colleagues, and we hope that you will be back again in the future. I find it extraordinarily appropriate that our Leadership Summit is on Veterans Day. Veterans Day was one of Ronald Reagan's favorite days of the year so that he could honor those who wear the uniform of this country. And I hope that all of you have had the opportunity or will take the opportunity today and every single day of the year to thank those men and women who do wear those uniforms and serve this country so that you can be free. So again, thank you. I'm not sure if that was purposefully put on today, but I find it highly appropriate, and I know the President would as well. I took some notes today while all of you were speaking and you were reacting. And if you'll bear with me, I have old eyes here, so I'm going to put this on. You know, I know a lot of you had a lot of other things to do on a Saturday in November. Many of you are high school students, some of you are college students. I think you're probably here because a teacher said this might be good for you, or you saw it on a website and you thought, you know, that'll be good for my resume, and it will. Some of you may be here because your mother drove you here to get you off of her couch from in front of her television, and that's okay too. We're just thrilled that you're here, and whatever reason that you got here, I hope you've had as good a day as I have. Have you? Yes, good. You know, I'm humbled and I'm really inspired by all of you. I have learned so much, and I know that's really probably shocking to have an adult say that to you as a teenager and a student, but we learn so much from all of you every single day. Please know that you are our teachers every single day. You know, we've learned about trust and the code of trust from Robin, and I'm thrilled that you're all getting one of his books, and I hope that you will take time to read it. Actually, don't just set it down next to your bed and start putting things on top of it, okay? Open it up, because it's filled with really great information. You know, we've learned that we have to ask questions. We have to be curious. We have to ask who, why, what, right? You remember that from this morning? You know, we learned that in order to make a pencil, you have to collaborate. Can you imagine the collaboration it's going to take to change the world if it takes that kind of collaboration just to make a pencil? And you need to use your strengths. You need to be humble. Robin was talking about humility. I know a lot of the other speakers were talking about humility. And you need to lead in service. We learned about the Nashville method and some very practical advice with ouch and oops. Y'all remember that from this morning? I don't know why that struck me, but I thought it was great. We've learned that it's important to say yes when asked to do a project, but that quality is more important than quantity. So really, don't add too many things on your list, okay? I know you're all teenagers and your list is really long, but be very careful. One thing that I heard and I loved was that there is no limit to what you can do as long as you don't mind who gets the credit. That is something that I try and live my life by. It's a plaque that was on Ronald Reagan's desk in the Oval Office. You can see it in the Oval Office exhibit that we have here in the library. And if you really want to keep it next to your heart and on your desk, you can actually buy that plaque in our store. Doing a little selling here today, too. You know, we learned some very practical points today, some cultural points. People in Kentucky do wear shoes. Texans are passionate about sweet tea and football, right? And that you're probably good at math and science if your ring finger is longer than your index finger. And I have to tell you something. Mine is, but I am not good at math and science. So I'm the one anomaly in the room. You know, we also learned that you need to live your own expectations, that you have to be confident, and that frankly, everything you probably want in life that's worth it, it's on the other side of fear, isn't it? Failure is essential to success. I think and I hope everyone in this room has experienced failure. If you haven't, then you're probably not going to be successful. And if you haven't, you're probably not human, because we all fail, probably every day in ways that we're not even aware. And what did I hear one person say I will not forget very soon? Rip off that Band-Aid, right? Just rip it off. We all know how it hurts, but we all know how good it feels when that pain goes away. You have to put one foot in front of the other, start walking, and keep walking. Get out of your comfort zone, okay? Because if we lead, they will follow. You know, two more qualities of leadership that I heard a little bit about today, but that's something that's really important to me, that I saw in Ronald Reagan. I was honored and privileged to work for him for 4 years at the White House, and so I have remained on his staff ever since. I got to know him a little bit as president and a lot about him as a man. And two of the most important qualities that I saw in him were integrity and his compassion. And when I worked for him, I saw that he was the epitome of integrity. And he displayed compassion every single day, in big ways and in small ways. So I want to share a story with you that I think a few people in this room have heard, but it's about the 1988 U.S. Summer Olympics team that went to Seoul, Korea. 527 athletes went that year, 332 men and 195 women. They performed in 27 sports, and they brought home 94 medals. 36 of them were gold. This was the team that had the likes of Florence Griffith Joyner, Matt Biondi, Janet Evans, Greg Louganis, and a young man named Kenny Mundy from Oklahoma. In October of that year, long after the Olympics were over, we finally were able to gather all or as many of those athletes as we could. We worked through all the logistical, you can imagine the logistical nightmare it took to get a schedule for all of those athletes and the President of the United States on one day. We managed to make it happen. We fought a little bit of rain, but we got them all to come to the White House, and we set up a photograph, which also was a logistical nightmare. On the south grounds of the White House, you can see the Truman balcony. We actually set up risers there, that middle section, and then the lower section, you can see FloJo there, and Janet Evans, and Matt Biondi, some of these faces that are very familiar to me and my generation. You may not know them as well, but I promise you, they were extraordinary athletes and great people. So we gathered them all on the White House grounds. The point was that the president wanted to meet them. He wanted to spend a few minutes with them. He wanted to speak to them, and we wanted to get a great photograph. And so we worked out the logistics. They all came by bus. They all filed in. We set them all up, many, many hours of planning, got them in their place, and then the president came out, and he spoke to them. And then they presented him with a hat. That was the hat that they wore in the opening ceremonies. He posed with them. I'm coming to a point here. And they decided they would sing together. And what he wanted to do was to go into the middle of that crowd and sing with them, okay? He didn't want to be in front of them. He wanted to be part of them because he felt they were part of him and the country. So he stepped into the middle of that crowd, and they sang together. And about 2 people up to his right, you'll see a young African-American man named Kenny Mundy. That's important here in a minute. When the song was over, the crowd went crazy. People were yelling at him, and they were screaming at him, and they were trying to shake his hand. And there was a lot of pushing and a lot of shoving went on, and people were trying to talk to him. And you can see up here in the far right corner, there's a guy's hand that has a ribbon on it. It's really hard to see. Far right corner. And the president's looking at something, and he's trying to hear. You have to remember, Ronald Reagan had a hearing problem. He wore hearing aids. But in a big crowd like this, it was very hard for him to hear. Also keep in mind that 300 athletes were yelling at him, trying to say hello and call him to do things. Well, he turned around because finally somebody said to him, "Mr. President, it's time to go. I'm so sorry." And he hated to go. But that's why he turned around. And the people in the back, you can still see there's people trying to still shout at him. So we picked him up and we moved him back to the Oval Office. I didn't go with him. What I did was I said to everybody, "Okay, it's time to go." So I went out the East Gate. Those of you who have been at the White House remember there's 18 acres at the White House. The East Gate is as far away from the Oval Office as you can almost get on the 18 acres. And when I got to the East Gate, the guard there, the uniformed Secret Service agent, said to me, "Ma'am, you are wanted in the Oval Office." I looked at him and I said, "I'm sorry, what?" And he said, "Ma'am, you're wanted in the Oval Office. The president has a question." And to say that I was floored would be an understatement. I was a peon. I was a little baby worker at the White House. I was never called to the Oval Office. So at that point, my heart sank. I was in trouble. That was all I could think about. I had never been called to the Oval Office. I had been in the Oval Office with my rest of my office. So to say that I went as fast as I could to the Oval Office would also be an understatement, and it's a really long way away. So as fast as I could politely, I went to the Oval Office, and I got there, and the president's aide said to me, "Joanne, the president would like to ask you something." And I said, "Am I in trouble?" And he said, "No, but he has a very serious question. He has a concern." Well, I had never been in the Oval Office directly with the president. So he escorted me in, and I said, "Mr. President, can I help you? I understand that you have a concern." And he said, "Yes." He said, "There was a young man when we were in the crowd, and he said he was trying to talk to me, and he was trying to show me something. And I couldn't hear him, and he couldn't hear me, and people were shoving, and I know that he got pushed by our security agents. I do not like that. Can you go find him and find out what he wanted?" Well, the only answer is, of course, yes, sir. Of course I will go find him and find out what he wanted. So I ran now I did run as fast as I could because all of these athletes were loading on buses to depart. Through the West Wing, through the ground floor of the White House, all the way to the East Wing gates and out the gate. There were about 8 buses loading out there. And I started going on one by one and saying, barely could breathe. "I'm looking for a young man who was trying to show something to the president in the group." No. I'd get off. About the 4th bus, I got on, explained what I was looking for, and a guy, I'm not kidding, in the back bench seat of the bus said, "I think that was me." I said, "Oh, goodness. Okay, good. Come with me." And he said, "No, ma'am." And I said, "Oh, yes, you're coming with me?" And he goes, "Well, where am I going?" And I said, "You're going to the Oval Office. You need to explain to the president what you were doing." He said, "Oh, no, ma'am, I'm not going." Now, you remember looking at him, right? He's a wrestler, so he's not a small guy. And I said, "I'm sorry. My job and the rest of my day depends on getting you to the Oval Office where the President of the United States is." And he said, "No, ma'am, I can't go. He said, the bus is gonna leave. I said, oh, believe me, those buses aren't going anywhere without you. And I said, you have to come tell him what you were wanting. He's really concerned that you were being pushed by Secret Service agents. And he said, no, ma'am, I wasn't. I was being pushed by my fellow athletes, and I was trying to hand him something. And I said, you must come tell him that. He's not going to believe it if I tell him. And he said, no, I'm not coming with you. And at that point I said, you have no choice but to come with me. I will go get a Secret Service agent if you do not come with me. And thankfully, all of his fellow athletes basically picked him up and said, you will go with her. So he did. So we went as fast as we could back across the 18 acres. I think that I did run 18 acres in the course of about 15 minutes that day. We got to the Oval Office, and I brought him in. Well, I presented him to the president's aide, and I said, this is the young man. His name is Kenny Mundy. He's from Oklahoma. And the gentleman said, who was a friend of mine, oh, good. The boss has been expecting you. Come on in. So I let them go, and Jim turned around to me, his aide, and said, oh, no, you're coming too. And I said, oh my gosh, no. No. So we got in there, and the president said to him, and of course the kids' eyes were like this, right? And around his neck, because they all had their medals on around their necks, around his neck is a gold medal. And he walked into the Oval Office, scared. I'm not even sure there's a dictionary definition of how scared this kid was. But I shared his fear, believe me. And the president said to him, son, he said, I saw you up there above me when the crowd was around, and he said, I couldn't hear you. There were too many people shouting at me, and he said, but I saw that you got pushed by one of my security men, and he said, I don't like that. I don't like it when security gets in the way. He said, I like my Secret Service agents, and he did. He had a great relationship with them. He said, but I don't like it when people are pushed. And he said, I just wondered what it is you were trying to tell me. And the kid looked at him and said, Mr. President, I'm embarrassed. First of all, Secret Service didn't push me. It was my fellow athletes that pushed me. We all wanted to say hello to you very badly. And he said, well, son, what is it you were trying to tell me? And he said, well, sir, I was trying to give you my gold medal. The president said, you were trying to give me your gold medal? And the kid said, yes, sir. He said, I wanted you to have it for everything that you've done for this country. And the president looked at him and said, son, I didn't earn that gold medal. You earned that gold medal, and I could no more take that medal from you than I would want you to give it to me. And the kid looked at him and said, Mr. President, would you at least put it on? And the president said, okay, I'll put it on, but the deal is you're getting it back. And Kenny said to him, okay. So he stood in that Oval Office and he put that gold medal around his neck. I'm sure that's the first time that's ever happened in the Oval Office at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And I don't think I've ever seen a man happier in his entire life than Kenny Mundy was that day. Probably happier than when he actually earned that gold medal. And so they took a picture. And the president said to him, all right, here's the deal. You're getting the gold medal back. And the President of the United States put a gold medal around that young man's head. And he walked out of that Oval Office, and he went on to become the wrestling coach at the University of North Carolina, where he is today. And I have never, I can barely tell the story still, been so impressed with a man, not because he was President of the United States, but because he was a genuine human being. I hope that all of you someday will be in a position to work for someone who is as genuine as he was. Was he perfect? No. He'd tell you himself he wasn't. He was a human being. But he was an extraordinary leader and a great man. And it has been an honor and a privilege to serve him for so many years and to continue to serve him and to represent him to a group like yours. And I hope that you will take something from today from Ronald Reagan, from something that Robin showed you, which made me cry, something from our museum, something from people that you've met here today, because people is what Ronald Reagan really loved. Nothing more than a gathering of people, especially young people. Oh my gosh, would he have been in heaven today, seeing the faces of everyone here, watching the presentations that you all have been giving. No one would have been more impressed than the great communicator himself. Now, I'm going to thank you for being here. I want you to know that your credential will get you into the museum, into any of the galleries, including Air Force One. I know many of you didn't have time to do that because there were so many people over there at lunchtime. Also, I hope you take time to go see Titanic. It really is an extraordinary exhibit. It tells the story of how we found the Titanic in the middle of a Cold War mission, a story that has never been told until now because it was just recently declassified. You will also be receiving a follow-up email from our education team. One of the things that they will ask you is whether you would like to be a presenter next year, just like our presenters did this year. I hope each and every one of you will take up that challenge. And if you want to talk to someone about that, these men and women that have presented to you all day will still be here. I want you to ask them about it, okay? Because we want to hear from all of you next year. We want you to be standing on this stage. You heard you're going to get a copy of Robin's book, so don't forget to grab one on your way out. And now, I want all of you to stand, please. Now, this morning when Tony asked groups to stand, people who had participated in programs that we have here, and we had a few over here, and we had a big group here, and we had a big group here. Now you are all graduates of an education program at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute, okay? Welcome to the Reagan family.